Yogendra Yadav is with us. Thank you, Yogendra ji. Disappointed?
Indeed, the results are disappointing. The results are demoralizing, especially the extent of defeat of the opposition. But am I surprised by the results? Probably by the extent of victory, but not by the NDA victory, because from day one, I felt this election was an election where NDA had a clear advantage, structural advantage right from the beginning, something that they never surrendered at any point.
What do you mean by that? Because let me just club one thing with you, which perhaps you did not anticipate from day one, and that was the turnout. If you look at the turnout in Bihar, which has broken all records, it does show an enthusiasm in the voters to participate in this electoral process, right? So, given that, what do you mean by the structural advantage of NDA?
I'll come to turnout. The structural advantage is number one, that NDA is a larger coalition than Mahagathbandhan. The BJP must be given credit for the fact that they have managed to stitch and managed to hold together, despite all kinds of difficulties, a coalition which is simply a larger coalition. In 2020, it appeared as if both the coalitions were of the same stature, but that was not true because Chirag Paswan was outside. Once you account for his inclusion, then NDA is always sort of at least 5% bigger than the MGP. In the Lok Sabha, their advantage was 8%. Now it looks like a 10-point advantage. That's the first thing. Number two, the NDA has a larger social base to draw upon compared to Mahagathbandhan. Mahagathbandhan's pool is at the most 40%, 32% Yadavs and Muslims, and 8% auxiliary smaller communities. The NDA has at least a 50% pool to draw upon because their auxiliary, that of the EBCs, is fairly large. So they draw upon a much larger pool. They are a larger social coalition. Number three, over the years, and not just in this election, NDA, specifically Nitish Kumar, has very successfully, very deftly cultivated, targeted, and secured the support from women, which can neutralize almost anything else. These three political advantages plus fourth, and I'm not going to say fourth is the only factor. I'm not going to say fourth is the predominant factor. But the fourth is systemic support, which is administrative structure, the entire governmental system, money, media, and unfortunately, the election commission. All these which work in a fairly one-sided way. So because of all this, but even if the fourth factor was not there, I would have imagined the first three factors were enough to give NDA a clear advantage in the election. Many friends focused over much, as we tend to do in the campaign days, smaller moves, this statement, that particular candidature, ticket distribution, etc. I thought these were of minor significance. In basic terms, as you speak of the fundamentals of economy, if you were to look at the fundamentals of Bihar's politics, this election was for NDA to lose right from day one. They had an advantage, they kept the advantage, and therefore their victory does not surprise me. The margin of victory does surprise me, though.
Talking about the margin of victory, and when you say there were structural advantages, social base, I understand, money, media coverage, fair enough. But look at the fact that Tejashwi Yadav is at the moment, at the hour that I'm talking to you, trailing by 4,000 votes. This is a seat which he won the last time by a 38,000 margin. What I'm trying to suggest, Yogendra ji, is that the BJP may be a richer party, the BJP may get more media coverage. You you may not be happy with the election commission, but the overwhelming mandate A to the BJP, to Nitish Kumar's great comeback moment, and B, it seems a vote against the RJD. Why would Tejashwi Yadav, the face of the Mahagathbandhan, be trailing in his own seat? He might scrape through, but he's having to scrape through.
Yes, of course, that would be very demoralizing for the opposition, for Tejaswi, because in all the opinion polls, Tejaswi Yadav has been actually slightly ahead of Nitish Kumar as a person considered for Bihar CM's post. So I wouldn't know of the seat exactly, but do look at the fact that actually Mahagathbandhan's vote share has not gone down compared to what it was in 2020. But what has happened is that it
Marginally,
is
marginally gone down, but the seat conversion has been absolutely decimated. The seat
yeah,
conversion.
because the change may have been less than 1 percentage point. I don't know the exact figures as of this
Yeah,
moment,
we have the
but
figure.
broad,
Yeah.
but broadly, their vote share is where it was. NDA has made two big changes. Number one, they have regained the coalition. And because they regained the coalition, that gave them 5 point advantage straight away. And number two, they have added to the votes which went to others. So instead of being more fragmented, this election has been more consolidated. And,
Yeah.
and the NDA has added to vote to which women have contributed in a very substantial and significant way. So these things have happened.
If I may, because I wanted to see the figure, the RJD had 23.5% of the vote share in 2020, and in the leads right now, it is 22.95%. So very marginal drop, very
So
marginal
yeah,
drop.
it's about the same. The
But I'm
message
asking,
for RJD, to my mind, is the following. Whatever the numbers, the basic fact is that in a state where there's enormous poverty, inequality, where unemployment is such a major issue, where basic infrastructure for health and education is still abysmal, in that state, if an opposition does not fails to convince the people to give it a chance, something must be wrong with the opposition. And I can think of two things. Number one, that the social coalition, which was the foundation of the great social revolution in Bihar of 1990s, the Mandal Revolution, it was a social coalition of what was called the Garib Gurba of Bihar. Remember, Lal Prasad Yadav was always the leader of Garib Gurba. In fact, unlike Uttar Pradesh, in Bihar, Lalu Prasad Yadav's social base was not limited to Muslims and Yadavs. He was the hero and leader of all the backwards, all the disadvantaged, all the marginalized. That reduced itself to a Muslim Yadav coalition. So, in fact, the rise of the MY coalition is actually the decline of social justice politics. That is the one big lesson. That's one thing Tejaswi Yadav might wish to learn from his father. But one thing he must unlearn from his father, namely the legacy and the accusation or the taint of Jangal Raj. Now I know that it is muchly hyped. I know the media has ensured that it remains in popular imagination. I know the media would erase all such things when they happen in Nitish Kumar's time. But the fact is that the memory of Lalu Prasad Yadav's last regime is something which in Bihar's popular imagination does not invite trust, and not only for the forward caste, it's also in substantial number of smaller uh, EBC communities. Also, there is a sense of anxiety when they see Yadavs and Muslims consolidating, when they see the prospect of Lal Prasad Yadav's family coming back to power. These are things that Tejasvi Yadav should have worked upon, or this is a challenge that they need to take on. There is no way of escaping that. It is true that election commission has been once partisan. It is true that the entire system has been against them. It is true that it's becoming almost impossible for an opposition to win an election unless there is a popular wave in favor of them. Despite all this, here is something that Lalu Prasad Yadav's family, that Tejasvi Yadav, should have done, which was not done.
Yeah, so can I ask you a little more about the Muslim Yadav coalition? What you're actually saying, I think, is that it was too narrow and siloed a sort of dependency, and that the RGD has not managed to grow or grow either beyond it in terms of social alliances or transcend it. You see, you can transcend the sort of calculations of social alliances, or you can have so many social groups within your ambit that you don't have to transcend it. I think what you're saying is that Tejashwi Yadav has been limited by his dependency on the Muslim Yadav coalition.
Yeah, that's certainly one way of putting it. Because I mean, There's no doubt that they tried to go beyond the inclusion of VIP and through
Yeah.
that of the Malay community, the inclusion of IIP, etc. But even that does not reach even the level that Akhilesh Yadav achieved. Akhilesh Yadav's PDA
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
still not the alliance of all the disadvantaged communities, but at least it's no longer only MY. In Tejashwi Yadav's attempts, that could not be achieved. So that's certainly a limit. And do remember that while Muslims and Yadavs have voted for and have voted for Mahagathbandhan, may have voted for higher proportion that compared to the past. But that actually invites a reaction. Muslims and Yadavs put together are 32% of Bihar's population. Fine, you got used to get 70% out of that. You may get 80% out of that now. Percent
Yeah.
would give you only what about 1.5 to 2% of Bihar's vote. But when people see Muslims mobilizing in greater numbers behind RJD or Mahagathbandhan, it has a counter mobilizing effect and it gives BJP a space to do Hindu polarization. And when people see Yadavs on the street with certain kind of confidence that we are going to come back to power, then it recoils on the party because large number of communities then say, oh my God, we need to do something about it. That's one. So that in terms of social coalition needed to be expanded. Number two, you have to go beyond just the social coalition and the social arithmetic. The point is, here is a state which has one of the worst records of human development. Here is a state which is crying out for improvement in its educational health infrastructure. Here is a by push factor, not by pull factor. And in that state, can we not make these into an issue? To be fair to Tejaswi, he raised it in the election manifesto. He spoke about it in his speeches, but that's not enough. You need to appear to be more credible alternative. Tejaswi Yadav had an asset. When he was deputy chief minister, he had given more jobs than Nitish government had done in its tenure. So he could build on that. But did he manage to do it? I don't think he managed to do it successfully. So there was definitely a failure on the part of the opposition, notwithstanding all the systemic biases that have operated against the opposition.
Sorry, I think that's the operative bit, that, whatever systemic biases you believe exist, and you've listed some of them, the opposition has to own up to its own failure. And I think that's what you just said, that the opposition needed a better social coalition, a better narrative, a better counter narrative to maybe take on the perceptions of the Jungle Raj, quote unquote, memories. Where do you define this failure when you say, despite the systemic biases against the opposition also failed? How would you define that failure?
Barkha, I would say both things. While I would want, you said what I believe to be systemic biases. So,
Yeah.
while I would want the opposition to acknowledge that their politics needed modification, that their politics had serious failures, I
Yeah.
would want you to acknowledge that the entire system has been rigged in this country against the opposition. And when I mean you say you, I mean the opinion makers of this country. I mean people who are watching and reporting, opinion makers, builders, media, and general public of this country. So it cannot be, while Yogendra, what you say about possible biases, let's not use that language, Barkha. You know politics of this country, and I know politics of this
Let,
country. Let's be straight and honest about these things.
no. See, let me respond to it since you've raised this point. I definitely think that the BJP is the resource-rich party. I definitely think that mainstream TV channels, have a certain tilt. But equally, I think our media is polarized, and in a way that it's never been before. Which, for me, as an old-time practitioner, I don't actually know. I just want to be driven by the facts. What I'm asking you is simply this: where do you define, in any election, unless Yogendraji, you are questioning the fairness of this election result, which I don't think you're doing. You're talking about structural biases, not the process. Unless you're questioning that, There is something the opposition did wrong, or the people of Bihar were not convinced that they did right. And all I'm asking you to do is to identify that. What do you think that is?
But I thought that's exactly what I was doing for the last 5, 7 minutes.
No, I
Let me
understood.
repeat it once again.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
let me again repeat it. You want me to say it for the third time? Let me say it.
Okay.
One, that opposition in Bihar, which began as a social revolution in the post-Mandal phase,
Yes.
which really broke the back of feudalism in Bihar, which was very important, and the upper caste hegemony in Bihar was broken for once. Gradually, that opposition got reduced to a very narrow social coalition, a social coalition that excluded the most disadvantaged among the OBC, and a significant proportion of the Dalits were excluded from that. So the opposition's challenge is to rebuild that alliance of the bottom of the pyramid. Because what Nitish Kumar has done is that he has become the very strategic position that he occupies in Bihar's social hierarchy. He has used that to reinstate the upper caste hegemony in Bihar by making large number of EBCs partners in this coalition. That needs to be broken, and the onus of that lies with the opposition. Who else would do that? Opposition has to do it clearly. Uh, that opposition must appear to be a credible alternative. There are
Hmm.
issues in Bihar. There are issues crying for attention. There are issues that in any other state of this country people would have thrown such a government out 10 years ago. I mean, I can't imagine people in Punjab suffering this kind of a government. They would have thrown it out 10 years ago. In Bihar, it continues, A, because people have now come to have such low expectations from any government, because the opposition does not seem to be offering a credible alternative. And credible alternative does not happen simply because you say nice things in the manifesto released 10 days before the election. It happens because you are with the people, you are among the people, and your election manifesto is known to everyone 6 months before the elections have begun, which is to say, top 2 or 3 things are known to the people. This did
Okay.
not happen. And that's
Can I
something that opposition needs to do.
can I ask you about the Congress? Because out of the 5 seats where the Congress is leading currently, 4 of them are leads which are less than 2,200 votes, right? Tejashwi, as I already mentioned, is trailing by around 5,000, but there are many rounds of counting to go. Only 11 are complete out of 30 rounds of counting. My question about the Congress is an important one because the Congress contested 61 seats and it's leading only in 5, 4 of which are by very narrow margins. This, for the Congress, is the principal opposition party of India, raises some anxieties. It will have a ripple effect on other alliances that other regional parties may want to forge with them in other states. Some might even say Rahul Gandhi's focus on vote chori found no resonance electorally with the people of Bihar. How do you see the performance of the Congress and the debate around Mr. Gandhi's focus on vote chori and SIR?
Congress may be and is a principal opposition in the country. Congress is nowhere close to being the principal opposition in Bihar. Congress is a tertiary player in Bihar. Congress has potential goodwill. Congress has probably added to its goodwill, but it has absolutely no mechanism of translating that goodwill into votes because it has no organizational network. It has no karyakartas on the ground. And therefore, in this election, in a sense, it's with the RJD that everyone floats. So I'm actually not surprised when the alliance does poorly, Congress does very poorly. Congress would do a little worse than the rest of the alliance. I'm more surprised and disappointed by the very poor performance of CPI-ML, a party which actually has cadre, which has done work on the ground, which has a network on the ground. They have also done very badly. So so in a sense, when the overall alliance drops or does so poorly, and when Tejaswi Yadav in his own seat is doing poorly, then what about people like Congress who are actually, in a sense, far far behind in the picture? What lessons for future? Lessons for future for Congress is when you are a tertiary player, you should play it like a tertiary player.
Yeah.
That the negotiations were carried so far. I mean, let's not forget that NDA had its own share of enormous difficulties in their alliance building, something that media did not want to pay attention to, and media had all the time and space in the world to talk about the difficulties in Mahagathbandhan. But the fact is that this, while it may not have damaged so much on the ground, but in perception terms, it created the impression of an alliance which is not quite there. And that's something that the media was happy to lap up. So, in its future negotiations, I think it's important that Congress goes out of its way and learns from BJP, in a sense, the art of building difficult coalitions, building and sustaining difficult coalitions, where Congress can play a more important role. And secondly, the simple fact is there is no magic formula to reviving Congress in a state like Bihar, unless you are willing to work for 5 years at least on the ground. No amount of, you change your state president, which is a good move. They made the right move. You bring in someone like Krishna Aluveru, nice move. Today, unfortunately, in India's political analysis, once you lose the match, then your captain was wrong, your fielding was wrong, your batting was wrong, your catching was wrong, everything was wrong. That's the usual Indian political analysis. I would
Mm.
say that those things Congress did right, but they simply I mean, if your overall coalition is not up to the task, then no matter what you do in 1 month, you're going to win this election. You have to be prepared to work for 5 years. The real question is, does Congress have it in them to work on the ground for 5 years? Does Congress have those kinds of leaders who would work for 5 years? If they do, they still have. I mean, even today, when I look at a figure of 4 or 5 for Congress, even now I'm willing to say Congress has much greater potential goodwill in Bihar than any of its votes and seats might suggest. But they have to really work for a very long term and work on the ground, which has been very difficult for the Congress.
Finally, on the vote chori issue, as in, I'm not saying all issues are electoral issues alone. I'm not saying that. But electorally, it didn't yield the kind of response from the public that perhaps you would have hoped for.
Two things. One, I can respond probably more about myself.
Yes.
The SIR campaign that we launched, anti-SIR campaign that we launched, that we have continued. We did it, Barkha, because we believe that SIR is a dilution of universal adult franchise, which it is. And I'm proud of the fact that we did it. I'm proud of the fact that because of that campaign and because of the vote adhikar yatra that the opposition took, Election Commission got frightened and stopped halfway through this disenfranchisement exercise. That the original target of 1.5 to 2 crore was reduced finally only to 40 lakh people names that were struck. So in that sense, anti-SIR campaign was legitimate, correct? Even if I realize tomorrow that opposing SIR and ensuring universal adult franchise favors the BJP, I will still do it. Because for me, this is not about ensuring that this party wins or that party wins. It's about ensuring universal adult franchise. As for the vote chori campaign of Congress, which is not only about SIR, it's a different kind of a campaign.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
vote chori campaigns are not election campaigns. Please see the difference. Vote chori campaign success or failure lies in the fact of whether people people accept your charge, whether people believe that the electoral system is being unfair and doing things that are illegitimate. I would suggest go on the ground, ask people, do they believe in it? But no vote chori campaign in the world ever helps you win elections because that's not what it's designed to do. That's not what vote chori allegations are about. So I don't expect any vote chori allegation to win you elections. It's a different matter to say that the time spent on vote chori during the election campaign period, could it have been devoted on other issues? That's a question which will continue to be debated. Also, because this is it's a large dilemma that opposition faces in this country today. As the entire electoral system is being rigged against the opposition, how much attention do you put on opposing the rigging versus trying to win within a rigged election? That's a difficult dilemma. If you face
What do
this
you
dilemma tomorrow,
what is
you would have the same problem, Barkha.
could you define rigged system? What do you mean by
The
that
rigged
here?
system is exactly what I said, Barkha. What you politely said, BJP has more resources. The simple fact is BJP throws so much money into this election, white and black. Maharashtra was a scandal for any democracy that the entire election machinery, the state machinery, is used to favor the ruling party. That the election commission is no longer an umpire, it's a player. All these are rigged. By rigged, I do not only mean EVM and people voting for someone and finding that the vote was cast for someone else. That's a very, very limited aspect of it, on which I will not comment unless I have evidence. But in the system is clearly rigged against the opposition. And it is a very serious dilemma. Barkha, if you were an opposition leader tomorrow, you would have the dilemma. Should I participate in this match knowing fully well that the umpires are one sided and the ground is uneven? Should I walk out? Should I play? Should I try and win? That's a dilemma that the opposition
The,
faces. And it's a
but
cruel dilemma.
but Yogendra ji, the same cash-rich, resource-rich BJP was pulled down below a majority mark by the same opposition in the Lok Sabha elections. My point being that if the isn't there a concern here that if the opposition looks at, oh, the system is tilted against us, it's actually never going to go out there and find a new message, maybe a new face, maybe a new social coalition. There has to be um, to win, you have to first acknowledge defeat. To win, you have to first say, okay, there's also something wrong with me.
Barkha, that I thought is exactly what I was saying for last 20 minutes or
No, you
so, that
were,
there is
I
something
was,
very seriously wrong with the opposition. But in political science, there is a term called competitive authoritarianism. And the term is about those regimes where there's authoritarian regime, where elections are lopsided, but the possibility of the ruling party losing an election is not zero. So when you say the ground is uneven, the ground is tilted against me, doesn't mean I would always lose the race. But I would win the race only when I'm 10 steps ahead of someone else. Then only I would win it by one step. That's exactly what the logic does. That's exactly what happened in Lok Sabha. So I'm not saying opposition can never win any election in this country. No, that's not going to be the case. And that's exactly why the dilemma. If that were to be the case, then there's no dilemma after that. Once it's clear that opposition cannot win any election in this country, of course they should boycott it thereafter, if that is the situation. The dilemma is precisely because we are in a competitive authoritarian system where element of competition is still real. However, it's tilted. And that's the thing you have to understand and see, okay, is it so tilted that it's pointless to run the race? Or is it tilted, but I should still work very hard to somehow win the race? That's the dilemma the opposition faces. And I don't envy them for the cruel choice that they have to make.
All right. I know you have to make many appearances, so we'll have maybe a longer debate, discussion, conversation later. Yogendraji, thank you for your time. Always appreciate it. And we will get, I hope, the opportunity to decode these results with more granular data in the next few days. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
See you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.